Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 746 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and we got a very special midway through the season episode here. The Rangers are 41 games into the 82-game regular season. We are exactly at the halfway point. The Rangers are 22, 12, and 7. They are in fourth place in the Metro Division, although I must point out that the Washington Capitals right now are just 1 point ahead of the Rangers, and the Rangers have 2 games in hand against the Caps. So I think we can sort of project the Rangers into third place right now. You got to figure they would get at least a point or two in 2 games. Hopefully they would do that. Bottom line, it's tight. The playoff race is going to be crazy this year. The Metro race is going to be crazy. And as hockey fans, we wouldn't have it any other way. But for today's episode, what we're going to do is give out some awards to the Ranger players for the first half of the season, and I'm also going to make some predictions for the second half of the season. So we're just going to go right through this pretty much rapid fire, or, do it as fast as we possibly can here because there is a lot to cover in today's episode. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and start the awards with most disappointing player as well as the MVP of the team so far. And I'm starting with most disappointing because I want to get that out of the way. It's basically just about the only negative thing that we have on here. And as far as disappointing player for the Rangers this season, I was kind of between Jacob Trouba and Alexis Lafreniere for different reasons for both players. We'll start with Trouba here. He has played in all 41 games, 3 goals, 11 assists. He's a -5, averaging 21 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time, 101 block shots, 127 hits. For me, though, it wasn't really about the stats. It was just about the fact that to start this season, Trouba was really struggling. I mean, I don't know what was going on. I understand he had, some lingering injuries. That's what the Rangers had said. We don't really know what those injuries are, and hopefully, they've gotten better. He has played better recently, so you would think that they probably have gotten better, but he just really, really struggled at the start of the season. And this is the guy that was just named your captain, and, right or wrong, a lot of Ranger fans are always going to fixate on that contract, the fact that Jacob Trouba is making $8 million per season. So when he's being paid that much, and you know that money is tight with this team, and you know that there are young players that the Rangers need to re-sign, a lot of fans are going to look at that and expect a lot out of the New York Ranger captain. They weren't getting it from him early in the season. I think, like I said, he's played better recently. And he at least had that moment as the Ranger captain, firing his helmet into the boards against the Blackhawks, and the Rangers went on a crazy run after that that's kind of still going right now. I mean, immediately after that, they won 7 in a row, and they've played very well even in the games since then. But, Trouba obviously struggled a little bit, but he did do a nice job from a leadership perspective, being very accountable after games, and, as the new captain of this team. With Lafreniere, and I said this the other day, he just has not gotten his season off the ground yet, and it's disappointing because, first of all, there's very high expectations for Alexis Lafreniere. You also look at the fact that he did a really nice job for this team during the playoff run last season. There were nights where the kid line was the best line on the ice for either team, and, you're just expecting more. You just look at the stats, 40 games, 5 goals, 13 assists. He's a +1, averaging 14.51 of ice time per night. And, I think one of the biggest things, though, beyond the stats and everything, there just aren't enough plays from Lafreniere that have that wow factor. And I know certain people are going to look at what's going on with Lafreniere, and they're going to point to the fact that he doesn't get a ton of power play time. He's never on the top unit. Ice time has been a little bit lacking recently. I don't know the exact stat, but it was something like 13 out of the last 15 games. Lafreniere has had less than 15 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. There's people that just think he deserves more of an opportunity. He needs more continuity as far as his line mates are concerned. There's some truth to all those things. But the bottom line is Alexis Lafreniere, to me at least, just has not looked like a quote-unquote generational talent. Has not looked like a guy that was taken first overall in the NHL draft. And the Rangers, they have some responsibility to bear there as well, because the Rangers have not exactly been a shining example of how to develop forwards as far as, teams in this league. You can go back as far as you want to. A lot of Ranger forwards that they have drafted early, sometimes in the first round, just have not really done a whole lot with this team and in this league in general. So the Rangers, they could probably do some things to help Lafreniere along a little bit, but Lafreniere himself has to pick it up. Now, there's also some people that think that he's never going to amount to anything and he's a bust and this, that, and the other thing. I wouldn't go that far either. There have been enough flashes here and there where I think you at least feel good about him eventually becoming a solid contributor for this team. And you got to remember, he is still just a 21-year-old kid adjusting to life in the NHL. We did an episode not long ago where, and in fact, it was our last episode where, the Rangers had just played the Devils, and, Jack Hughes is out there looking like a world beater. We kind of compared Hughes to both Kakko and Lafreniere. Jack Hughes, it's easy to forget this now. He's in his fourth year right now. He didn't do much of anything in his first 2 seasons. I mean, he was just anemic. So he obviously found his game last year, really turned it on, and just hasn't looked back. And you hope that something like that is still possible for Lafreniere. And for everybody saying that there aren't any signs that Lafreniere is going to become that player, well, there weren't really any signs that Jack Hughes was going to become that player either. But the talent lies within with players like Hughes and with players like Alexis Lafreniere. And you just never know. Any moment could be the moment that kind of, sparks a player like this, whether it's Hughes or Kakko or Lafreniere or whoever it might be. And obviously Kakko's played better this season. But the bottom line is, Lafreniere does need to be better, but I do think, sooner or later he's going to break through and eventually become a, solid player for this Ranger team at the very least, despite an underwhelming and disappointing first half to the season. MVP, let's go to something positive here. If you just want to go by points, Panarin has 11 goals and 34 assists, so he's got 45 points in the first half of the season. Mika is just 1 point behind with 44 points. He has 19 goals and 25 assists. Mika, you could make a case for him. I've described him in the past as the Rangers' most consistently excellent player. He just brings it every single night, plays in all 3 zones, just an exceptional, well-rounded player, and somebody that you just look for, when you're looking at, a top-line center in this league. You can just look at Mika Zibanejad, and he's the prototype for such a player. You could always go with Igor. He doesn't have the video game numbers that he did last year, but he's the backbone of this team, and I'll still take him in a big game against pretty much any goalie in this league. You could go with, I'm going to throw out Ryan Lindgren a little bit there. I've talked in the past how he's the heart and soul of this team and how they seem to fall apart whenever he's not on the ice, but I am going to give the first half MVP, despite there being some really good candidates, to Adam Fox. With Mika, we talked about the consistency. With Adam Fox, it's that, but from a defenseman. Adam Fox, night to night to night, every time he's on the ice, he's making an impact in a positive way for the New York Rangers. Even when the Rangers were badly struggling earlier this season, Adam Fox seemed to be one of the guys that was showing up every single night, always had his head in the game, always had a little bit of jump in his step, somebody who just brings it. And, for my money, the best all-around defenseman in this league. He, of course, won the Norris 2 years ago. He has a chance to win another one, and we'll talk about that in due time here. But yeah, Adam Fox, to me, the MVP of the first half for the Rangers. And his strong play is made even more important by the fact that, K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba really struggled in the first 20 or so, maybe 25 games even of the season this year. So when that's the case and 2 of your top 4 defensemen are scuffling, you need Adam Fox, your best defenseman, to play at the absolute top of his abilities. And that's what we got from Adam Fox throughout the entire first half there for the New York Rangers. Also want to go with the worst transaction that the Rangers have made and the best transaction that they have made. I think the worst transaction that the Rangers made is actually one that they ended up getting away with, and that was putting Julien Gauthier on waivers to start the season. He did not make the Ranger team out of training camp, and he was exposed to waivers. Anybody could have claimed him. Nobody did. He went down to the Hartford Wolfpack, and maybe that did him some good because he's played the best hockey that we've seen him play as a member of the Rangers so far this season. Not that he's like setting the world on fire and he's stuffing the score sheet every night, but for a guy playing on the fourth line, about 8 minutes and change per night, Gautier's doing a nice job. 8:52 per night. I do have that written down there. But again, the Rangers, they put him on waivers, and listen to some of the players that made the Rangers out of training camp, okay? You got Sammy Blais, who has struggled. Part of that's due to the injury last year. I get that, but he has struggled and not really been a very productive player. One was Ryan Reeves, who they ended up just, making a healthy scratch for, I lost track of what it was at a certain point there. I think it was like 7 out of 8 games, 8 out of 9 games, something like that. Finally trading him to the Minnesota Wild. He made the team. Dryden Hunt made the team, who the Rangers then placed on waivers and was claimed by the Colorado Avalanche. And Ryan Carpenter made the team. And he was put on waivers and is now in the minor leagues with the Hartford Wolfpack. So all 4 of those players who, barely have or barely did make any impact with this team, they all made the team. The Rangers risked losing Julien Gauthier for nothing. They got away with it, and now Julien Gauthier, a productive player on the fourth line for the New York Rangers, at least relative to his ice time, only averaging 8:52 per night, and has 6 goals and 3 assists in 30 games, draws a bunch of penalties, has done a nice job, and again, the Rangers got away with one there, putting Gauthier on waivers. An honorable mention for worst transaction is going to be trading Ryan Reeves, and I totally get why they did it, freeing up some cap space. They didn't really seem to have a need for him anymore, but he was a good guy in the locker room, and it's just one of those things that it is a little bit of a gut punch. I totally get why they did it, but it still kind of sucked, for lack of a better term here. Best transaction for the New York Rangers this season, that's going to be signing Vincent Trocheck in the offseason. The prize get for the New York Rangers in free agency. As I mentioned in the past, both during the offseason and in season a couple of times here as well, the Rangers had a really tough decision to make when it came to what to do here as far as second-line center is concerned. Do you hang on to Ryan Strome and extend him because you're familiar with him? Do you hang on to Andrew Kopp and extend him because, he made a very favorable impression in a short amount of time? Or do you take a little bit of a risk and go with Vincent Trocheck? You dive into the unknown a little bit. The Rangers did the third of those options. They went with Trocheck, and Trocheck has been, as far as those three players are concerned, by far the best player of those three this season. Trocheck in 41 games, 13 goals, 17 assists, surprisingly a -7, but a 56% success rate on the faceoff dot, 19 block shots, and 95 hits. Seems to be gelling with Panarin, and, just somebody who's come in here and fit pretty seamlessly with this team, and from a personality perspective as well. Couple of honorable mentions here. As far as best transaction, I'm cheating a little because I'm going to put Ryan Reeves on this list as well, because like I mentioned, I totally get why they did it. They trade him away, got a 5th-round pick for him, and more importantly, open up some cap space. I think also the Jimmy Vesey extension. That happened just less than a week ago here, and you lock up a reliable bottom 6 forward at a very reasonable price of $800,000 per season for the next 2 seasons, so that was good. And I would say also Ben Harper, a PTO with the Hartford Wolfpack, and he ends up playing with the Rangers and doing a pretty good job so far for this team. A couple other awards here. Breakthrough player. I thought about Kakko. I thought about Hedl. Kakko's really come on recently, but he still is less than a half point per game player. Hedl's been really solid, having the best season of his Ranger career so far, but I'm going to go with Braden Schneider. 41 games for Schneider, 5 goals, 5 assists. He is a +10, averaging 14.59 of ice time per night, 62 block shots, 60 hits. Guy who does a little bit of everything. He's contributing offensively now. Very physical player. Got a lot of size, obviously. Show me a better third-pair defenseman in this league than Braden Schneider. I think you'd have to look pretty long and pretty hard to find one. And, he actually replaced Jacob Trouba when Trouba was scuffling quite a bit. He actually moved up to the second pairing and did just fine there as well. I mean, he's been solid as a rock. He's had to play with a million different defense partners since he came into the league, some of whom were pretty shaky, to say the least. And he hasn't let it bother him. He pretty much just hit the ground running with the Rangers and just off to a great start in his NHL career. So we're going to keep this rolling with a couple more awards for worst loss and best win of the season, and then we're going to transition to some predictions for this upcoming season for the Rangers. And we're going to do all that good stuff in just a second. But first, just got to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and hockey, we've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We also have to give a special attention call to fans of the New York Rangers. Attention, New York, with so many exciting matchups scheduled for January, there is no better way to start 2023 than by cheering on the New York Rangers at Madison Square Garden. Start off the new year with some Rangers hockey. Lots of games left to be played. Be there to cheer on the Rangers with your fellow Blue Shirts. Bring the passion and energy. After all, it is the fans that make a true home ice advantage. There's no experience like watching a game at the world's most famous arena. You need to be here to experience this Rangers team in person. Get tickets now at NewYorkRangers.com/lockedon. Once again, that is NewYorkRangers.com/lockedon. We just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. So to wrap up the awards, section of this episode and then move on to some predictions, worst loss of the season, there's some serious contenders, especially early in the season in October and November. I'm going to say, though, it was the home loss against the Edmonton Oilers. The Rangers were up 3-0. going into the third period. They gave up 4 goals and just a dumbfounding loss. The Rangers had just blown a chance to win 3 out of 4 games on a road trip, and they lost 3-2 in Anaheim. And believe me, that game was a contender as well. But you come home, you respond, or so it seemed. You're up 3-0 against the Edmonton Oilers, a high-powered team, obviously. And the Rangers get goals, 2 goals late in the second period to go up 3-0. And they're in complete control. And then in the third period, you get 2 goals from Evan Bouchard, who cut the lead to 3-2. Those were his first 2 goals of the season. You get a goal from Dylan Holloway, who scored his first goal of the season. And then you get Leon Draisaitl scoring on a power play with about 2 minutes to go, and then knocking the stick out of Jacob Trouba's hand on purpose after the goal. So just a complete nightmare and a miserable loss. And, naturally, they were wearing the Lady Liberty jerseys. Those, the retro jerseys that aren't really retros, but I've already said my piece on that. But that just felt like rock bottom for the New York Rangers, because it felt like it was going to be a very important kind of a statement-making win, and instead it just turns into a complete nightmare. Best win of the season. So, couple of candidates to run through, couple honorable mentions. I'll say opening night against Tampa. They won 3-1 in that one, played exceptionally well there. That's really the only candidate for October and November, though, which gives you an idea of how those 2 months went for the Rangers. Another honorable mention, I'll say the 6-4 win at home against the Blues. They trailed 4-3 going into the third, and that was when they were, right in the middle of their funk. It's possible that if they lose that game, Gallant gets fired. I don't think it would have happened, but the possibility is on the table. Instead, the Rangers come storming back in the third period. They score 3 goals. They win 6-4. I will also say a 2-1 shootout win in Colorado. Very impressive victory there as well. That happened not too long after the game against the Blues. But I'm going to say the best win of the season, beating the Devils 4-3 at home in overtime. That was on December 12th. The Rangers had won 3 in a row. This was the 4th. They went on to win 7 in a row. And the Rangers, they were down 2-0 less than 5 minutes into this game. The Devils had been hot. You had a big goal from Chris Kreider late in the first that cut the Devils' lead down to 2-1. The Devils extend it to 3-1. Then you get goals from Trocheck and Kakko to tie the game in the second period. They scored 7 seconds apart from each other. Important goal for Kakko. That seemed to kind of ignite him a little bit, and obviously he's played better since then. Scoreless third period, and then in overtime, you've got Artemi Panarin winning the battle for a loose puck and setting up Philip Hedl, a little drop pass for Hedl. Hedl scores off the pipe and in. But just a big win for the Rangers here. And to me, at least, and I realize the Devils are still having a good season, this to me represented a little bit of a shift here, because the Rangers have been struggling. The Devils were off to just a ridiculously hot start that no team could possibly maintain through the whole season. And this kind of felt like the Rangers kind of like a paradigm shift almost, where it was kind of like, all right, Devils, that was a cute little start that you had to the season here, but we're still the Rangers, and we're still, one of the top dogs in this division, and just a big win for the team. And I realize the Rangers, of course, just lost to the Devils in overtime, game that they probably should have won. We'll see what happens between the Rangers and Devils the rest of the way here. They got one more matchup. Maybe they see each other in the playoffs, but just a big win for the Rangers, kind of a win that sent a message and was just a joy to watch, and one of those wins that when Hedl scores in overtime there, gets you out of your seat a little bit, that is for sure. But I want to shift our attention to some predictions. To start off here, I'm going to say the Rangers make the playoffs this season, and they will get home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs. I could still see the Carolina Hurricanes winning the division for the second straight year. They won the division last year, and second straight year that the Rangers would finish second to the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that's at least possible, but a second place finish, I think for the Rangers is definitely within reach, and that would get them home ice advantage in the first round, which could be really nice. Of course, that happened last year, and the Rangers were at home against the Penguins, and they had home ice advantage for Game 7 and won that game in overtime. So it would be nice, certainly, to get home ice advantage in the first round this year as they did last year. And I think that if that happens, the Rangers, they'd be a pretty good bet to move on to the second round of the playoffs. Only time's going to tell there, and there's a million things that could happen, but I like the Rangers to finish at least second in the Metro Division. I'm also going to say, second half of the season, Igor Shesterkin will be a top 3 goalie. He had a really rough start to the season, and that's why some of his stats, though good, aren't necessarily as good as you would think they might be. But he's really found his game recently. Even in this most recent loss to the Devils, he stood on his head, made some outstanding saves. I just think, Igor Shesterkin is going to have a big-time second half, and he's still somebody that I would take in a big game against any goalie in this league. So we will see, but I'm expecting big things for Igor Shesterkin. Probably too late to catch the top goalies as far as another Vezina is concerned, but Igor's going to be awesome in the second half of the season. That is my prediction, and one that I definitely feel very good about. I'm also going to say, we got the trade deadline coming up at the beginning of March 3rd to be exact. I'm going to say the Rangers end up adding 2 players at the trade deadline, a 6 or 7 defenseman, based on however you look at it. Maybe somebody that could replace Harper in the lineup, even though Harper's played pretty well, and also a right winger. The Rangers are still kind of thin at right wing. There's guys that they tease you with some upside and some potential, whether it's Kravtsov or whether it's, Gauthier. But I could see the Rangers adding a big-time right winger and somebody that would immediately slot into the top 6 at the trade deadline. Maybe they add a third player as well, somebody that could just kind of slot in there on the fourth line and maybe replace a Blais or a Brodzinski. We'll see. But I think you'll see the Rangers add 2 pretty significant pieces at the trade deadline this season. They added a lot of good players last year and hopefully more of the same this year. I'm also going to say, another prediction for the second half, we will not see the top power play unit for the New York Rangers change a single time in the second half of the season. And I'm going to take it a step further. We also will not see a power play where the top unit does not start the power play. We're not going to see the second unit start a single power play the rest of the way this season. I think the Ranger top power play unit has, and will continue to be Panarin, Trocheck, Kreider, Mika, and Fox. And that's not a bad thing. That's a very dynamic unit and a very dangerous unit. But I just get the feeling that no matter what happens, Gallant will stick with that quintet as the top power play unit throughout the rest of the season here. Speaking of the power play, I also believe the Rangers will rank in the top 8 to end the season. Why top 8? Because right now they're 13th. It might be tough for them to get into the top 5. But I just feel like, again, with the personnel that they have, they're due to go on a heater as far as the power player is concerned. And I think they'll eventually get into the top 8. And the top 8 also represents the top quarter of the league. I think for sure the Rangers should at least be in the top 25%. There are some teams in front of them right now that you look at it and it's like, wow, the Sabres have a great power play. The Senators have a great power play. There's a couple others too. But I think eventually the Rangers will work their way up there. Right now they're 13th at 23.7%. This one is a little bit more for the offseason, but I'm going to say that the following New York Rangers are in their final season with the team. Sammy Blais, I think he will move on in free agency. Vitaly Kravtsov, I think eventually he gets traded. I'm not convinced about this one, but I get the feeling Julien Gauthier, eventually the clock's going to strike midnight. He's been so close to not being on the Rangers anymore. But, he's an RFA. Maybe the Rangers do a deal with him and he stays. Libor Hayek, speaking of the clock striking midnight, I just get the feeling the Rangers are eventually going to look to other defensemen to handle that 6D-man spot. Hayek's had enough opportunities, and his ceiling seems to be just, average play, very average play from a 6 defenseman. So I could see him moving on. I think Halak, he'll probably be one and done. He's a UFA at the end of the season. Ditto for Carpenter. And the bold one is Barclay Goodrow. I'm not convinced this is going to happen. I don't even necessarily want it to happen, but the Rangers are going to have some tough decisions to make, and you got to get guys like Hedl and Lafreniere and Miller signed to new contracts, and so Goodrow and his cap hit might be a casualty this offseason. Anyway, we're going to keep things rolling with some other predictions for the Rangers in the second half of the season, and we will do that in just a second. But first, we got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1 about 8 months ago because I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, and I wanted to see what all the hype was about. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy. It has kind of a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It is lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it is cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL BetOnline.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, let's keep everything rolling with a couple more predictions here, and then we can call it a day and turn our attention to Rangers versus Wild, which will be happening on Tuesday night. But for this next one, I'm going to stick with a prediction that I made in the preseason coming into the regular season. Chris Kreider ends up with 45 goals for the New York Rangers. He is currently a little bit off the pace. He's got 19 goals through 41 games, also 11 assists for anybody wondering about that. Coming into the season, Kreider obviously last year scored 52 goals. I think pretty much everybody expected him to not reach that mark again, but I maintained throughout the entire preseason that I think he will get closer to that mark than a lot of people realize. And it was kind of a bold prediction because before that, Kreider had never even scored 30 goals in a season, much less 52. But my logic, and it's the logic that I still have right now, is that his formula is very repeatable. He goes to the net. He's so good on those deflections. He cleans up some loose change in the crease. He can continue to score goals at a very high rate. And something else to consider here. I mentioned that the Rangers, I think their power play is going to see an uptick in the second half. They're only 13th right now. And Kreider, after having so many power play goals last season, only has 4 this season. I think sooner or later, he's going to start to put a few more pucks in the net on the man advantage. And when you consider the fact that he's hit the post a couple of times, he's had some bad luck with some goalies just absolutely robbing him. He's had some deflection attempts that have just missed. I think sooner or later, you're going to see Kreider's goal total spike, and I think I'm sticking with it. Kreider is going to get 45 goals for the Rangers this season. Here's a bold prediction, and I'll admit this is one that I'm kind of trying to maybe just speak into existence here. It's going to be tough, but I'm going to say that Adam Fox, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier in today's episode, he wins his second Norris in 3 years. Won it for the first time 2 years ago, and he gets another one this year. 41 games so far this season. Fox has scored 7 goals, has 33 assists, so 40 points. He's right there as far as point per game is concerned from a defenseman, which is crazy to think about. He's also a plus 14. And, right or wrong, I think a lot of times what happens with the Norris is it goes to the defenseman who ends up with the most points. And obviously, defensemen should get a lot of consideration based on how many points they get. But I think it looks at that a little bit more so than defensive prowess. And if it does go to the defenseman with the most points, right now it's going to go to Erik Karlsson because Fox has 40 points. Karlsson leads the NHL, as far as defensemen are concerned, with 54 points. Just a crazy total. Josh Morrissey is second with 46. Rasmus Dahlin with 44 is third. And then Fox with 40. So if Fox is going to win the Norris, then he's going to have to, close in on Karlsson at least a little bit. I don't think he necessarily has to catch him and pass him, but he's got to get it closer than 14 points. That's too much to ignore. And I don't think that the Norris should always go to the defenseman with the most points, but when you're having that kind of season that Erik Karlsson is, I think that certainly merits some consideration. He's been unbelievable for the Sharks. Really kind of an up and down, bizarre career path for Erik Karlsson, but you got to give him credit for what he's doing this season on a bad team, no less. But, Fox, he's so important in every aspect of the game for the Rangers, and he's going to have a shot at it at least. I think at the very least, you'll see him at least be, one of the finalists, the 3 finalists for the Norris this year, and fingers crossed that he ends up winning that award for a second time. A couple rapid-fire stats to get through. I'm going to say Artemi Panarin ends up with 25 goals this season or more. He currently has 11, so he's off the pace a little bit, but he's been shooting a little bit more recently, and I just think that he's going to continue to do that, start to play almost a little bit more selfish. We talk about how the Rangers have to do that sometimes. I think Panarin's been doing that a little bit more often, and just a lethal shot. We saw him score a goal from the blue line a couple games ago when he's just kind of circling around the entire rink and just lets it fly from the blue line and scores, beats the goalie clean. So Panarin, he's going to end up with 25 plus goals for the Rangers. I'll say K'Andre Miller gets 40 assists. Miller I thought was on the verge of just becoming a phenomenal defenseman in this league. Struggled so much out of the gate this year, but he has really turned things around. He currently has 17 assists, but he's been racking them up recently, and I think the best is yet to come from K'Andre Miller. So give me K'Andre Miller. I'll say 41 assists because 41 would put him at a half assist per game. So let's say 41 assists for K'Andre Miller. Modest one here, but I'll say Kravtsov gets to 15 points or more. He currently has only 5. Seems like he's starting to figure it out and gain some confidence, albeit very gradually. Getting to play with Panarin and Trocheck. Eventually, the points are going to come for Kravtsov to a certain extent, where he'll get 15 points. And to conclude this, a little bit of humor here. Sammy Blais gets his first goal as a New York Ranger. I'm calling it. He's going to clean up some loose change in front of the goal or something like that. Maybe one will just deflect off his leg and go in. Sooner or later, Sammy Blais going to score a goal for the New York Rangers. Yeah, I figure we could pretty much call it there for today. This is a lot of fun, just kind of taking inventory and looking to the second half of the season, getting ready to go here, getting fired up for some New York Ranger hockey, and hopefully they can respond to what was a tough loss against the Devils and take down the Wild on Tuesday. One other thing I wanted to mention, going to start mixing in some NHL trade deadline talk pretty soon. The trade deadline is on March 3rd, and so I think, we're getting to the point where it makes sense to cover that at least a little bit, and I will look to do so in a couple future episodes. There was an episode last year, it was a 2-part episode, where I looked at the 16 teams that were not in playoff position, and I looked at one player from every team that the Rangers could have some interest in. So we'll go ahead and do that in a future episode for sure, and just talk trade deadline in general. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com, and definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at @LO_NY_Rangers, and definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. This episode in particular, great example of one that will be available on YouTube at least, good amount of hours, about 6 hours or so before it's available on audio. So definitely do subscribe there. For your second listen, check out Locked On NHL Prospects, your daily podcast covering the next generation of hockey superstars leading up to the NHL Draft. Locked On NHL Prospects, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.